Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of the Coffee Course. We're here in Treebark Store in Cullen, and today me and Tom are going to be talking a little bit about latte art.
Yeah, so today we're going to be getting on the coffee machine today. So whether you're a coffee enthusiast at home who's got an espresso machine, or you work in a cafe, we're going to be going through milk texturing, milk chemistry a little bit, and how to get the best latte art in a cup. So yeah, looking forward to it today. A bit of a change, Chef.
Yeah, I think it's going to be some interesting insights for people. They probably have a lot of concepts around what is and isn't good for latte art. And I know people get obsessed about latte art and the first one to learn. So I think this could be a good stepping stone for those who want to take that knowledge a bit further.
Absolutely, yeah. The thing with us is creating a latte art isn't, we shouldn't compromise the coffee when we make a latte art, but it just shows that you're making a really good textured cup of coffee. It should be the last step of the chain of events that happen behind the counter. So we're not saying as well that our way is right. We're just saying this way works, and we're kind of decreasing all the variables that kind of pop up. So I hope you can take something out of it today. I hope you can learn something.
Yeah, I think your point there is very relevant. People get obsessed with it, like I said, but the important thing to remember is you should really work on your consistency of the temperature and texture of the milk first and foremost.
Absolutely.
And only when you're comfortable with that and can repeat that without any hesitation, then you should progress. Yeah, it'll be an ultimately frustrating process before that, I think, because people want to jump straight into doing designs and work, but if you haven't dialed in how to make your milk properly, there's really no point.
Absolutely. And the thing is, some coffee shops may have just a black or a milk drink, and other coffee shops like yourselves, you have an espresso, americano, cappuccino, latte, flat white. And you shouldn't be striving to do latte art if somebody orders a cappuccino, because essentially it's not that type of milk, it's more frothier milk. So you should only be using textured milk, is what the milk we call it. We should only be using that for lattes or flat whites, and maybe mochas if you want to. If you're using the chocolate milk and you want to be really skilled. But we keep it just to lattes and flat white.
Okay, so we're going to hop on over to the machines and get a bit done.
Perfect.
First off, guys, you're going to pull your double shot espresso, and we'll be using this then with the milk. Firstly, the milk is poured to the bottom of the inside spout for any 6-ounce drink, which we'll be doing today. So water will have condensed in the steaming wand, and we remove this by giving the wand a purge, is what we call it, and this is just by turning it on for half a second. So dip the steaming wand into the jug so as to cover the tip fully so milk doesn't fly everywhere. Keep the natural angle of 15 degrees of the wand and make sure the bottom of your jug is parallel to the floor. There's no need to tilt the jug. So then turn on your steaming wand fully and begin to spin the milk. From here we will slowly drop the jug towards the floor to create a void for the air to be trapped and to be forced into the milk. This is done in 2 stages. The first stage is aeration and heating of the milk, and the second stage is just heating of the milk. You only need to drop the jug roughly 2 centimeters towards the floor, so as the air is forced into the milk while being churned. You do this for approximately 3 to 4 seconds, and once this is completed, you're going to rise the jug up towards the ceiling another 2 centimeters, and then this will create the heating process. From here, you just want to heat the milk up to 56 to 62 degrees. Once the milk has been spun inside the jug to the required 62 degrees, you want to keep the spin going as this folds all the microbubbles out of your milk. Then once finished, guys, you turn off the steaming wand, take the jug out from the steaming wand, give it a clean with your rag set aside just for milk, give the wand a purge as to release any milk stuck inside the steaming wand. So now we've got our textured milk, guys, and what we want to do is 2 things. We want to bang out the microbubbles that rise up to the surface, and then what we want to do is reform our milk, and we do this by spinning the jug, spinning it in a clockwise or anti-clockwise motion. And this makes sure that the foam and the milk are bound together and are not 2 separate textures. So here comes the tricky part, guys. What we want to do is tilt our jug to a 45-degree angle and also tilt our cup slightly as well. Our first pour is going to blend the milk with the espresso in, and we'll do this by pouring a small bit of milk in concentric circles. Then we're going to stop pouring. We're going to reform the milk then, and this gives a concise liquid for our latte art to be formed. And we do this by spinning the cup around, so we're making sure that the espresso and the milk is formed together. And this creates a really great contrast later on once we've finished the latte art. So then we start our second pour. From here, we slowly and very uniformly pour our milk in concentric circles until we reach about 3/4 way up the cup. From here, we want to get the nozzle of the jug as low as we can to the liquid and essentially dump the foam by pushing it out of the jug onto the crema of the espresso. And we do this by pushing and pushing and pushing. And from this we form a tulip, which I've created.
Okay, so we had Tom showing you and talking you through some of the basics of latte art. To be honest, there's just so much to go through, we couldn't possibly hope to cover it all here, but we might just talk a little bit and see what some of the thoughts are.
Yeah. So, we talk a little bit about milk chemistry first?
I think that'd be a good place to start.
Yeah. So, obviously it's July, so milk at the moment is really, really good because all the milks are out, all the cows are out in the fields. They're all happy. So they're all eating grass. It's not December. They're not stuck inside in a barn eating silage. So at this time of year we get really clean, very little microfoam. It's like the perfect milk essentially to be working with. Yeah.
Okay, so I think what you had shown there earlier was the technique. And as you said, it's our technique, your technique, whatever way you want to approach it. It's not necessarily the only technique, but one of the most important aspects, and something that maybe people figure out after a while, is that initial blending of the milk is crucial really to the building of a good latte.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people's styles could be just get straight right into it, and the milk essentially, they're two different densities, water and milk. So you have to give them time to incorporate together and coagulate. So that's why we do that first pour, because it's more forgiving then as well. So when you do that first pour and do your reform, essentially you've got two of the same densities that work together. But if you just go straight into it, you're already on the back foot already. So it's a really good tip just to dollop your milk in, swirl your jug as much as you can so it should be all the same colour, and then go for your second pour again.
And then in some way connected to that, as we talked about before we started recording, you'd mentioned about the difference between using ceramic or dine-in cups versus using takeaway cups.
Yeah, so for you guys using cups at home, it's less forgiving because with a ceramic cup or a glass cup or whatever cup you have at home, it's usually a more polished cup, so there's a lot less friction, so the liquid moves over the surface a lot quicker, so you're going to have liquids moving much faster and everything's happening much faster, whereas with takeaway cups there's more friction, so everything slows down and you can see when it's happening, when you're making an error nearly kind of before it happens. So it's better to work with, obviously it's better to work with ceramic, it's better for the environment, but it is, if you can get yourself a takeaway cup and use it, if you are doing it at home, use it a couple of times just to try out, because it slows everything down just that little bit.
And I think, again, as we mentioned, one of the biggest problems here is this is a process that you're going to have to do a lot before you get to a point where you're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And even getting then from comfortable to confident is a whole other step again.
The funny thing is, we do latte art classes and we spend the time doing them, but look, for you to really get comfortable with latte art, I know you might get it a couple of times, a heart or a tulip, but to really get comfortable you need to be going through about 1,000 litres of milk, really guys, a cow of milk, just to be anywhere near where you want to be. I know it took me, you have to be behind a coffee machine really to be getting good at it all the time. There are days that we have taught people and it's been a miracle that they've created.
I think some people just something clicks in their head and it makes more sense and they can understand it. That's why it's very difficult to get people from 0 to over here, because they might have even preconceived notions of how it should work.
Yeah.
And I think what I find when I'm teaching people is it's that movement, the push, as you'd mentioned earlier on, of how to push the milk out.
Yeah.
A lot of people are trying to throw that milk out, and then they're actually separating the good milk from what they need to work with.
Yeah.
Getting that tiny movement, which almost isn't actually movement.
Yeah.
If you watch people's hands. So when you're teaching people, you can't slow down to show them that, because the minute you slow down, that's when it's gone wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But when you're teaching people, essentially, they're always doing it too fast.
Yeah.
So like you have to really, everything that you're doing, you have to slow it down. You should be really controlled about it. It's a thing there's so many nuances. You can even see from the clips of me moving the jug up to 2 centimeters, what I was talking about, and moving it down. It's so minuscule and small that it's almost, you wouldn't think it matters. So, and even with that, with your tilt of the jug and pouring it, everything is done really slow and controlled. So everything you're doing, if you're making latte art at home or commercially, slow it down. You know, everything has to be slowed right down and spend the time. It's almost like a pen and paper, and the jug is your pen, the paper is your cup, and the ink is the milk. So it has to be that kind of texture and movement for it to work.
And I suppose maybe we should talk a little bit about different milks, alternative milks.
Yeah, it's a funny one. You know, we were just talking beforehand about even just taste, texture, what goes into them. So my preference, I think your preference as well, with oat milk is oat milk, for sure. We've gone through them all. We've gone coconut, almond.
Soy isn't really around anymore. It's obviously for good reasons. It's not used as much. Almond for me, I find both taste-wise quite overpowering. Yeah. Also, the texture, no matter how well you work with it, just seems to separate. Yeah. Like you can get decent work out of it, but you have to. I don't like how hot you have to make it in order to make that work. Yeah. Coconut structure is sound, but very, very hard to actually build a design with. Yeah. Dissipates quite quickly as well. Oat for me seems to be like the perfect blend of structure, temperature, texture. You can get a beautifully textured, really nice design. The taste profile is neutral enough, but also, as you'd mentioned earlier, a little bit malty. Adds a bit to the coffee. That's my preference to work with. I'm sure there's other milks that we haven't tried.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's loads of hemp. It's endless. But the main thing to take away from it, guys, is what's really important for latte art and milk is the protein. So with all these milks, they usually have a uniform 3.5, and if you're lucky, you might get a 4.2 fat in milk. There are some high fat content milks, but what we really want to look at is the protein count. And if you look at the likes of Minor Figures or Oatly, they have their own barista style milk, and essentially all that is they're just getting the protein count just right. So the number you should be hitting is around 3.5 to 3.0 to 3.5. That's what makes the perfect textured milk. Possible. Yeah, and you can see that with coffee shops and yourselves. If you use these milks, you're gonna get the best results for an alternate milk for latte art.
And I guess too as well, you'd mentioned as well earlier on, it's latte art. It's not cappuccino art. It's not it may be in other drinks, but this is something that what people might aspire to. It's not necessarily as important, because we've all worked here long enough in other places. The vast majority of people, especially if it's takeaway, a lid goes on that cup pretty quickly, or sugar gets into it, or whatever it may be, or more milk. So really, it's more important that the customer gets a milk that's at the right temperature and texture. Like, the visual aspect is always nice.
Absolutely.
But I get to eat a meal that looked amazing and I didn't like the taste of, and I was happy with it. You know, it's very important that the actual experience of drinking it, which is the more tactile part of it, is correct.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't make that of bigger importance, really.
Stress that enough.
Yeah, really, because there's nothing worse than going into a coffee shop and getting a latte or a flat white, and you have a dome of foam on the top because somebody is trying to do their latte art. You know, it does take time. If your milk is too foamy, pour out that little bit of foam. You should know by the spin in the jug how thick it is over time. But really, just don't compromise your drinks. That's the main thing. Keep a latte, keep a flat white, a flat white.
And I think as well, sound is your best friend, I find.
Absolutely, yeah.
One thing that I've learned when teaching the people is, and one thing that everyone can dial into, because texture and temperature is a bit subjective, especially with people's hands and the size of the jug and when's the right point to stop. But we can all hear when milk is being frothed correctly. There's a little bit that scratches at the inside of my skull and I'm in other places and I hear the screaming of the milk.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you can learn to listen to and dial into that kind of point of the swirl, and you can hear the little and the point where it's right to stop, you'll even hear that from across the room when you're used to it.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. If you go into a coffee shop and you hear the really high pitched scream, the really high one, there's a problem. That means your milk hasn't been aerated. So once you aerate, you're going to hear the scratch that you were talking about, and there's only should be a certain amount of that scratch, which is about 3 to 4 seconds. That's a really, really good point. Another point just to talk about really quickly is for the guys at home, say, who can't put in the hours behind a coffee machine and they're only essentially making it once or twice a day. The main thing is that, so Jeff's coffee machine here, he's steaming his milk at 1.3 bars. It shows it on the commercial coffee machine, but if you're at home, you might not have one of those gauges or indicators. So you might want to crank it up a little bit more than usual if you have that option, because once you start to steam, the pressure from the steam wand will decrease as you use the milk. So if you're steaming at 1.2, by the time you get to the end of the steaming process, it might be down at 0.8, and there's not enough power then. And then you're getting frustrated that you can't do your latte art, but realistically it's because you don't have enough power there at the start to steam your milk. And the last thing for e-home users as well, and for people who are behind the counter, is get yourself a thermometer starting out. It's really, really important. You must know by touch what the correct temperature is.
Yeah, but that's again from, as you said, like how many thousands of litres of milk. I mean, I might not even be looking at the jug, but just from the feel and the sound, I will know when to stop.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, you still have to pay attention, because even no matter how vastly experienced you are, if you get a little bit distracted sometimes, it's all too easy to make a little movement or whatever, and your milk is gone.
Yeah,
you know?
and then you have to start all over again.
And you have to be willing to start all over
again. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the important thing too, is knowing when it's not right, that you're not going to save it. There's certain bits of milk that you may be able to save, but when it's wrong, it's wrong, and it should not be used.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, guys, that's as much as we can cover in one episode in regards to latte art. We're going to try and get back to doing videos more often now that we can actually be within relative distance of each other.
Yeah.
Jeff from Tree Bark Store here in Mulcullen, thanks for joining us today.
And I'm Tom from Pangea Coffee Culture. We've been the coffee course.
Yeah, and a big thank you to Owen Bell from behind the camera, Owen Bell Photography. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.